Good evening, hello and welcome. We are continuing coverage of Budget 2026 here on India Today. But today we have another big story also breaking this Sunday evening. The big story that we are breaking at this moment, Pakistan has decided to go ahead and boycott its match against India in this month's T20 World Cup that begins next week. ICC sources claiming they have not received any written communication from the Pakistan Cricket Board as yet. Any sanction will be decided only after the PCB informs ICC officially. BCCI says we have no such information. Only when we are officially informed will we give our opinion. Remember that India versus Pakistan T20 World Cup match was scheduled to be played in Sri Lanka on the 15th of February. This move comes days after Bangladesh decided to opt out of the World Cup. They were protesting the decision of the IPL to keep Mustafizur Rahman out of the tournament. So it appears the cricket world is split wide open and the subcontinent is split wide open now ahead of the T20 World Cup. Nikhil Naz joins me at this moment, our consulting sports editor. Nikhil, explain what is the logic Pakistan is giving, given the fact that they have accepted in the past hybrid model. Yes, they won't play in India, which is why the match was shifted to Sri Lanka. So what reason is Pakistan giving for boycotting the match?
Well, Rajdeep, they haven't issued a official reason, but just going by what Mohsin Naqvi had said about 5 to 6 days ago when he was speaking to the press, he said we are in consultation with our government. At that time, he had mentioned that what has been done to Bangladesh is unfair. And, if hybrid model can be made available to India and Pakistan, why not Bangladesh? And that was the last that PCB spoke officially. And then they said, we're going to consult our government and get back with it. Now that you have an official confirmation, it's pretty much confirmed that it's the Bangladesh issue after which they've taken this call. And that actually is a bolt from the blue, a bit of a surprising bit, because, in the recent past, I was there at the Asia Cup, Rajdeep, and there were issues between India and Pakistan. On that occasion, when Pakistan felt sighted, when they thought that they were being treated unfairly, when India refused to go to Pakistan to play the Champions Trophy, then as you know, no handshakes. Then following that, you had a few Pakistani players that were punished for making a few references to Operation Sindoor. Then you had a scenario where the Indian team refused to collect the trophy from Mohsin Naqvi. A lot of things happened that was directly related to Pakistan, and yet Mohsin Naqvi and the Pakistan government at that time did not deem it necessary to boycott a match versus India. They continued to play 3 matches. Now there is a scenario where there is an issue between India and Bangladesh, and then Pakistan decides to take Bangladesh's side and decides they're not going to play India. And that is why I said that when the issue was directly pertaining to Pakistan, they did not take that step. They're taking a step now. If I can, second guess Pakistan, or I hazard a guess because I was there at Asia Cup, I think there are 2 crucial factors why this call may have been taken. One, as I mentioned, Bangladesh, but not so much on the cricketing field. I think there is a genuine effort from geopolitically from Pakistan to, extend a hand towards Bangladesh, get them on their side, and to,
Right.
with especially a lot of uncertainty with India, fear of military attack. So I think that's one reason they may have done. And secondly, Rajdeep, I think a very important thing, which could be that, a reason that has Pakistan has taken this call is I think Mohsin Naqvi has taken it personally, all those things that happened there. Now he is in a position of power. When India refused to take the trophy, that was the last game. So I think it is a decision which has been keeping geopolitics in mind and all the things that happened personally to Mr. Naqvi and not so much cricket. Because if it was cricket at heart, then Pakistan has literally shot themselves in the foot. I have numbers for you which we can dwell on as we go along.
Just a minute. The fact, Nikhil, is that there are precedences where countries have chosen not to play against another country in the World Cup. 2003 World Cup. England, for example, chose not to play against Zimbabwe because of the Mugabe government, which they said was violating human rights. For years, people chose not to play South Africa, of course, because of apartheid. The question is here, Pakistan had agreed to a hybrid model that both the countries had agreed they would play each other in third countries. What are ICC's options? Can ICC only financially censure Pakistan or say that Pakistan will be banned from international cricket, let's say for 12 months?
I mean, this is something that the ICC is going to look at. You gave those few examples, Rajdeep. 2003 it happened, 1996 it happened, and then during the T20 World Cup in 2009 as well, Zimbabwe refused to go there. But on those occasions, there were either no diplomatic, relations between the two countries, or there were security concerns which were made in advance. In this case, neither are there any security concerns because Pakistan is who asked to be playing in Sri Lanka. They have no security concerns there. Neither, are there any issues which Pakistan has taken to the ICC and taken the call. Remember, I don't think, oftentimes it's said that, they've done something to India and ICC will take that call and India might be controlling things. But let's not forget, you are actually going to be hurting the revenue of the ICC. That's going to hurt Cricket Australia. That's going to hurt, English Cricket Board, New Zealand, everyone. The ICC board is going to sit and then ask Pakistan, what is the reason that you've decided to pull out of this particular tournament? Because that will not cut mustard by saying, listen, because you were against Bangladesh. That's not a decision that India took. The ICC board actually voted in favor of not having Bangladesh in the tournament because they were refusing to play in India. So I think you would take those things into account. If wins and fancies is what every nation is going to do or every cricket board is going to do, then ICC is going to be in a bit of a trouble. So I think this is now left Pakistan exposed to some sort of action, or sanction that the ICC can
Has
take.
it isolated India in the subcontinent also and ruptured, in a sense, India is the superpower of cricket. But with that Mustafizur decision, and I think we need to separate what India did with Bangladesh with what Pakistan has done now. There were questions whether that decision was taken in haste to ask KKR, Kolkata Knight Riders, to cancel the contract with Mustafizur. Bangladesh reacts. Now Pakistan joins in. Willy-nilly, the fact is the subcontinent's cricket world has been badly fractured and ruptured. I mean, that is also a fallout. The big revenue match of any World Cup is India versus Pakistan, which now may not take place.
Well, that's true. But to say that India is isolated may not be accurate, Rajdeep, because
isolated
yes,
in the subcontinent, I said.
Yes, even in the subcontinent, you may have a scenario where, you've got Pakistan as well as Bangladesh on one side. But as we've seen in the past, Sri Lanka has been voting in favor of, BCCI in that sense. So I'm just talking about the strong cricketing powers that you have. Afghanistan Cricket Board has been voting in favor of, what the BCCI has wanted in the last few months. And then I think the one area or one particular a property that's going to bear the brunt of this could be the Asia Cup. I think that may be an issue going forward.
I've got Sunil Gavaskar also now joining me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Gavaskar. This news that's coming in, Pakistan deciding that they are not playing the match against India on the 15th of this month. What's your sense? Is this, how do you view it, sir?
I mean, it's their call. They have taken a call. They must have considered whatever they have to consider, and they've taken a call. I don't think India has got anything to do with it. India did not have anything to do with Pakistan taking that call. They have taken the call. So whatever the consequences of that is something that they would have also thought about whatever the consequences are. And
but purely from a cricketing point of view, do you believe that this is where politics is taking over? Pakistan wanting to make a geopolitical point, as Nikhil rightly put it, to try be seen to be siding with Bangladesh. All of this not good for the game, is it?
I don't think they've, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think they've said anything to do with Bangladesh. I know they made there were some comments coming in that they would, withdraw from the World Cup as well. So obviously that was not going to happen. I mean, even in India, there has been talk about not playing Pakistan the last couple of times. So Pakistan.
Do you think ICC should sanction, sir? We are having a problem with your video, but do you think that ICC should sanction Pakistan if they don't play? Because you can't run cricket on the whims and fancies of a country, suddenly decide I won't play.
Oh, definitely, yes. I think if you withdraw at the last moment, if you withdraw earlier on, that's another matter. But if you withdraw at the last moment, on the eve of the tournament, then yes, I think certainly the ICC should come in and take some action. I don't know what action they will take, But I think that's
What
something
kind
that
of
the
action
ICC
do you
will
think,
definitely
what
consider.
kind of action would you support, sir? Would you say 1 year ban for Pakistan on international cricket, or would that be too severe?
I think it is. I think there are so many other boards, so it's not just going to be one person's decision. But I think it will be something that will to ensure that no other team in the future also considers doing that. It will be something which will be to ensure that no other team will do that.
Okay, Sunil Gavaskar, for joining me here on that big breaking story along with Nikhil Nas. Thank you both very much for joining me here. Okay, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented her 9th consecutive budget on Sunday today. This budget comes amidst global headwinds and the Trump tariff war. Public capex in the budget has risen to 12.2 lakh crores with a 10,000 crore MSME funds and a push on manufacturing, particularly in areas where India has perhaps an edge in exports. There are also, in a special geopolitical signal, Chabahar allocation has been cut to zero. Defense spending has risen 15% to 7.85 lakh crore. Let's take a look at the big takeaways of Nirmala Sitharaman's 9th budget, which got a thumbs down from the markets, but was otherwise seen to have a pretty decent response.
And moderate inflation.
A budget prepared in the shadow of global headwinds, triggered by the tariff war unleashed by Donald Trump. Nirmala Sitharaman, presenting her 9th consecutive budget, chose to navigate the choppy waters without rocking the boat. So instead of big bag announcements, the FM's budget speech on Sunday focused on firewalling the economy. At the time when private investment is yet to pick up, public capex has been raised from 11.2 lakh crore to 12.2 lakh crore. A 10,000 crore growth fund to create what she called champion SMEs. 40,000 crore for India Semiconductor Mission 2.0, up from 22,919 crore rupees allocated for the first version. Eligible SEZs allowed to sell in domestic tariff area at concessional rates of duty. Customs duty cuts on inputs too boost some labor-intensive sectors like textiles. A tax holiday till 2047 for foreign companies' data centers in India. Income tax rates remain unchanged, although compliance norms have been eased.
Over 350 reforms have been rolled out. This includes GST simplification, notification of labor codes, and rationalization of mandatory quality control orders. High-level committees have been formed, and in parallel, the central government is working with the state governments on deregulation and reducing compliance requirements. I am happy to inform this august House that I fulfilled my commitment made in 2021-2022 to reduce fiscal deficit below 4.5% of GDP by 25-26.
The G Ramji scheme, which has replaced Manrega, is allocated rupees 95,692 crores and another 30,000 crores allocated to clear pending Manrega dues. While the budget did not give any grand schemes for poll-bound states, it announced 7 high-speed rail projects, 2 of them for Chennai.
We will develop 7 high-speed rail corridors between cities as growth connectors, namely Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bengaluru, Hyderabad to Chennai, Chennai to Bengaluru, Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the budget as historic.
जो बड़ी बड़ी ट्रेड डील्स भारत ने की है, मदर ऑफ ऑल डील्स, उसका मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट भारत के युवाओं को मिले, भारत के लघु और मध्यम उद्योग वालों को मिले, इस दिशा में बजट में बड़े बड़े कदम उठाए गए हैं.
The opposition claimed the budget failed to meet expectations.
इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल करने के लिए भी इनका कोई समाधान सकारात्मक कोई सलाह या कोई कदम उन्होंने नहीं दिखाया। इसी तरह रुपए का गिरते हुए मूल्य के निपटने की भी कोई योजना उनके पास नहीं है।
The influence of geopolitics was hard to miss. Zero allocation for the Chabahar port in Iran, a cut from 400 crores allotted last year.
अटैक हुआ है नूर खान बेस पे।
Coming just months after Operation Sindoor, there is an increase of more than 15% in defense allocation from 6.81 lakh crores to 7.85 lakh crores. Bottom line, Nirmala Sitharaman is playing a grinding test innings on a wicket checkered by global forces at play. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, so how should we see Budget 2026? We are going to go into what we call the budget face-off now. Joining me now is Dr. Manu Singhvi, a four-time MP of the Congress, eminent jurist, Chair, Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law and Commerce. Also joining me is Professor Dr. Gaurav Ballabh. He is part of the Economic Advisory Council, economist, politician with the Bharatiya Janata Party. Also with us is Surjit Bhalla, someone who's tracked budgets probably longer than anyone else, former executive director at the IMF. Good to have all of you on the show. I'm going to ask you, because I want you to be crisp, each of you. You give me first, Gaurav Ballabh, ruling party, what do you think is the biggest strength of Budget 2026 and the biggest weakness?
See, the biggest strength, I can say, the budget, the entire premise lies on 3 M's. Focused approach to MSME, focused approach to manufacturing, and maintenance of the reform express which is happening in the country. I will give you 10 seconds for each of the 3 points. When I say MSME, starting with the equity support, with the liquidity support, and there was always one argument that majority of the benefits of the MSME sector were taken away by the small and medium. Micro were not getting most of the things. So this time there is a provision of corporate mitras who will ensure that the benefit of the MSME schemes moves to the micro enterprises also. Coming to the second M, that is manufacturing, starting with the sunrise sectors like Semiconductor Mission 2.0, Biopharma Shakti, to the conservative manufacturing, like there is a high-tech tool room for the CPSCs, the Central Public Sector Enterprises, container manufacturing, which is one of the most required thing in the export-import. The issues of the textile industries are addressed in this budget. 3 new chemical parks were announced, and from the social sector side, from the education to the orange economy, there are a lot of things in the manufacturing sector. The third point, which is the continuation of the Momentum Express or continuation of the Reform Express. Earlier Reform Express was on broad gauge. Now there is a high-speed rail is there on the tracks of high-speed rail network. Reform Express is moving. Starting with the infrastructure, you can see, Rajdeep, 6 lakh crore rupees approximated is allocated to the infrastructure sector. Defense sector got a very high boost. Third point, the Atmanirbharta in the defense sector. Already we had a defense production of 1.5 lakh crore in FY25, domestic defense production by our MSMEs. The export of the defense equipments are ever increasing in the last 2-3 years, and this is one of the collateral benefit of the Operation Sindoor. So okay. I gave you the
You've given me 3 M's.
You asked me
MSMEs,
plus
manufacturing,
yeah,
and the Reform Express, which you're saying maintaining
and
the
maintenance
momentum.
of momentum.
Okay, I've got your point. Let Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi give me the other perspective. Why do you think that this budget of 2026 is very tepid and insipid? Those are the words that are being used by many opposition leaders, and maybe give me your reasons for that. You're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Absolutely correct, Rajdeep, and possibly an understatement as far as those adjectives are concerned. What I liked are 2 phrases about the budget. One is that it's like an ATM. The screen lights up, but the cash doesn't come out. And she spoke in a ninth budget speech for hours, but I think the middle class heard basically silence. So let me give you very quickly the bullets you need. First, it just doesn't add up. You know, there's a very special trick about budgets. You keep on talking nice things about the future, but they have to gel with the past. So what we will get in the future over the next year, well, we can only hope. But it directly contradicts the past. Take, for example, capital expenditure. It is actually reduced as a percentage of GDP from 3.2 to 3.1%. In absolute terms, it is reduced by almost 1,44,000 crores. It doesn't add up. Second, revenue expenditure has been cut drastically in what I thought were the highest public interest sectors for the country. Rural development, 53,000 crore rupees cut. Urban development, 39,000 crore rupees cut, and so on. Agriculture, 6,985. I'm not going to bore you with figures, but that's the trend. Third, my friend just spoke, although we are not in a debate, we are all speaking individually, I was told, but he spoke about manufacturing. You know the irony, Atmanirbhar has become a supreme irony, a myth. Manufacturing is stuck at 12.8, less than 13% for more than a decade. The sector which should be growing most, we are actually sustained by our services sector. So what you're talking about is the future, rosy, nice projections, but this is the disconnect with the past. How can you suddenly jack up manufacturing from a consistent structural, stuck in the rut of 12.8 to this rosy picture of the future? It doesn't add up. Then, fourthly, tell me which of the major concerns your own economic survey raised are addressed by this budget. Let's take gross fixed capital formation. It's very low from 25, 28 to 30%. What is there specific about this when an actual capital expenditure is cut drastically? Jal Jeevan Mission, which is your own mission, is cut from 67,000 crores to 17,000 crores in the revised estimates. Now, what you've done is you again jacked it up for the next year. But if your immediate past year performance is this huge cut, it is just, very highly questionable.
So you're saying there's a huge gap between the government's claims and the reality on the ground, because you had Gaurav Ballabh giving a list of areas like these rail corridors, specific schemes that have been announced by this government. For example, tax holiday till 2047 for foreign companies setting up data centers in India.
So,
they've given specifics, Dr. Singhvi.
Rajdeep, in the long run, as John Keynes said, we're all dead. I'm very happy if this happens in 47, but I'm comparing it with the immediate past year. MSCs was mentioned, MSMEs. Corporate Mitras is an administrative ease of business effort. What is the solid thing to reduce the lakhs of MSMEs which have shut down? Tell me a single. Corporate Mitras will help them to file forms.
I gave
urban,
you and
urban
Mr.
and rural
Ballabh
unemployment
equal time. I want to give the same time to Dr. Surjit Balla. Is there a middle ground between the two extreme views that I heard just now, Dr. Balla, in this budget? When I look at some of the early criticism, it is that the budget didn't do enough. It could have been a breakthrough budget. It isn't. The other view is it has provided a strong element of stability and the potential for future growth.
Okay, I don't know whether I'll fall in between the two views, but let me also give you my 3 points on the budget. First point, that in terms of social indicators, and by that I mean poverty reduction, women's empowerment, notification of labor codes, etc., the government has done spectacularly well. These things all happen before the budget, and the government has to be credited with what they have done in these areas. Then, in terms of economic policies, the income tax cut and the GST tax reduction, two policies that I was very much in favor of, have also been announced and are in place. So those are two background to the budget announcement today. The third point I want to make, what I was looking for from the budget is what it does to private investment. That is what ails the Indian economy. And there is not much I see in the budget to accelerate private investment. Our major problem is net FDI is now negative. That means Indian investors, net, are investing more abroad than they are in India. That is to say, Indian capital expenditure, etc., by the private sector. The public sector, that is going as normal, which you also mentioned, and that is good. But what ails the Indian economy is that there is lack of private investment.
But
and
that's,
for us
with Dr.
to grow-
Bhalla, the
Last
government on its part claims we've given a number of incentives over the last 5 years. What are we to do if the private sector doesn't do any lifting?
Yeah, that's a very good point you're bringing up. What is the private? Look, the private sector is not an agent of the government that it has to do what the government wishes. The private sector around the world reacts to incentives. And what
So
this
why is the
means
private sector
that
not
the
responding?
government
Is there,
not
what is the
providing
explanation?
incentive. Sorry?
What is the explanation for the private sector not responding positively?
Okay. One explanation for the private sector not responding positively, and this was the Supreme Court action just about a week or 2 weeks ago on taxation and Tiger Global taxation, etc., and bringing this, the High Court had said it was all okay, and the Supreme Court then ruled. Now, I'm not one of those that believes that the Supreme Court is such an independent agency that it can act against the interests of the government, against the interests of the Indian citizens. So therefore, that is why, if this is another version of tax terrorism.
You're saying
That
there's
is
a
why
lack
the
of
private
certainty,
sector is not very happy with
Okay,
India.
I take your point, Dr. Bhalla. I take your point, and I want to take that to you, Gaurav Bhalla, because this budget, many believe, needed to do more. Private investors don't say it on camera, they won't say that, but off camera they say there is still concern. Of course, there's the global uncertainty, but there's a sense that ease of doing business on the ground, there are still far too much regulatory cholesterol. For example, tourism has been given a lot of focus in this budget. But when I speak to people in the tourism industry, they say there are still plenty of loopholes. I want to set a hotel up in India. I have to go through hundreds of compliances. So how are you going to actually turn intent into execution?
See, point by point, Rajdeep, as you had asked me why private sector investment is not picking up. Now, one of the reason why private investment is not picking up is the geopolitical environment in the economy. Second, as pointed out by Professor Bhalla, is about the certainty. So, in the last 3 years, the public capex is increasing, but in the same rate, the private capex is not increasing. I am admitting in front of you. But it is not that it is constant, it is growing. But the rate of growth, like public capex in FY15 was 2 lakh crore, in FY27 we are budgeting for 12.2 lakh crore. So there is a 6 times increase, but that kind of increase is not there in the private investment. So what we are doing, if we are maintaining fiscal deficit at 4.4% of GDP, next year we are targeting 4.3% of GDP with the stable kind of macroeconomic parameters. When the GDP growth is growing at 7.4%, the vicious cycle of the private investment is going to break, and the private investments are also going to grow in the same manner as the public capex. So I am not of that opinion that private capex is not going to grow. Coming to your point, Rajdeep, that there are certain constraints as far as the deregulation and ease of doing business is concerned, and I am admitting, that is the reason my third point, maintenance of the momentum in the reform express. So the reforms in 3 Ls are very much required. Already process is there. The labor reforms already process is initiated. Now it is the state's turn is there to make the rules for the labor code. Then the second L is the land reform. Already there is a lot of thought. Already the process is initiated. And third is about the legal reforms. When I say legal reforms, it is about executing the contracts. So with these kind of reform agenda
you're saying
in
this
mind,
is work in
I'm
progress.
very
I
sure
take
that
your point.
private sector
Let me give
investment is
Abhishek
also
Manu
going
Singhvi a final word. You see, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, one of the concerns I have, we don't have a shadow cabinet. So when the finance minister makes his speech, the opposition, instinctively says it's a terrible budget. But how would you have, what I keep asking this to opposition leaders, what would you have done different? Give me one thing that you would have done that Nirmala Sitharaman has not done today. Again, you're on mute, sir.
First of all, Rajdeep, I don't speak on the basis that I have to criticize for the sake of criticism. There are some good things. For example, Biopharma Shakti, semiconductor mission. These are good things. Rare earth corridors, we want to do some things to reduce Chinese dependency, etc., etc. But these are few and far between. You are asking me all the things I've criticized on. I would have given much more for agriculture. I would have done much more for MSMEs. I would have done for direct employment. You are talking of indirect. Even an expert like Mr. Bhalla, whom I hold in very high regard and esteem, is able to really point to the positives as first, non-budgetary. I mean, poverty reduction, women's empowerment, government codes are good things, but they're not budgetary issues we are discussing today. He has to struggle to find a GST cut which is dehors the budget. And he rightly points out private sector low investment. So on the budget itself, there is very little except that there is a rosy picture for the future every time. On each item, the immediate past 1 and 2 years have shown great reductions, and the very same thing is jacked up for the future. In addition to what I have said, I think there is, and I think my friend Mr. Vallabh is perhaps adopting that, this whole thing about acronyms and jumlas. 2 of his 3 M's I have dealt with. I have shown you the M about MSME. Corporate Mitra is hardly a very big boost to MSMEs. Manufacturing is stuck at below 13%. So what is these 3 M's? And L's are, the long-term legal sector reform and all. These are not budget. You have not used the budget as a tool of economic advancement, acceleration, a push. Very tepid and very, insignificant.
Okay, I've heard both of you. I will give Dr. Bhalla 30 seconds. I know that's a very limited. Dr. Bhalla, what is the one thing you would have liked to see that you didn't see in this budget?
Anything to increase private investment. And as far as the one thing, I would have hoped that they would say something about the Tiger Global judgment of the Supreme Court. But let me add, just since I've only taken 15 seconds, let me take 15 seconds more. All of you taking recourse to, oh my God, the world is so uncertain, and therefore we've done the best. If you look at GDP growth rates around the world in 2025, they were higher for 53% of the countries, higher in 2025 than in 2024. So we're facing the same global situation as the rest of the world. So let us not congratulate ourselves that, look, we're facing a tough environment. Oh, what can we do? What we could do is to provide incentives for private investment to go up and reduce tax terrorism in our country.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate my guests joining me at the moment. 3 very different perspectives. Thank you all very much for joining me. I'm going to go now to a voice who always has a very strong opinion. Amitabh Kant, former CEO Niti Aayog, joins me at the moment. Dr. Kant, if I were to ask you for your 3 big takeaways from Budget 2026, what would they be?
Well, first and foremost, I think the smartest thing done today is that they've given a 22-year tax exemption for data centers. 80% of the investment in the world is happening in the field of AI and data centers. If you're able to attract all the investments here, you will drive cloud, you will drive computing, you will use Indian data to really drive artificial intelligence all over the world. So that's number one. To my point, it's a big ticket thing. Number two, I think the fiscal discipline. We are in the midst of global disruption. We are in the midst of geopolitical breakdown. In the midst of all this, Nirmala Sitharaman has demonstrated her ability to be fiscally prudent and to be fiscally responsible by ensuring that the budget fiscal deficit comes down to 4.3% and the debt to GDP ratio comes down to 55.6%, and yet increase the allocation for infrastructure to 12.2 lakh crores. This is, to my mind, no mean feat. We should recognize that this is infrastructure and manufacturing drives growth. The focus of this budget is on manufacturing, the focus is on infrastructure, and both will give you long-term multiplier effect on your economy. The third thing I would say is that the budget also takes care of sectors which have been impacted by Trumpian tariffs. It takes care of textiles, it takes care of leather and footwear, it takes care of marine sector, and more importantly, it takes care of tourism sector. These sectors are job creating sectors, so the impact of job creation should happen over a period of time, but important to say that they've pushed for relief in these critical sectors. So these are my three broad points.
It's interesting Mr. Kant, it's interesting you mentioned tourism. It's a sector you've been closely associated with in the past. Many believe, yes, tourism is a force multiplier, but we've seen that all the intent, all these announcements don't translate into execution on the ground. Particularly in tourism, the number of compliances that are required to set up a hotel, for example, difficulties that charter companies have. Do you believe that this is where center and states need to work together, where you've got to turn intent into execution, let's say, in a critical sector like tourism?
So two things, Rajdeep. I think the real challenge is in doing world-class execution. Execution is the key. You have cities, you've put in about close to 5,000 crore per city for economic region, tier 2, 3 cities. You've also spoken about 7 high-speed rail corridor. My experience is that the dedicated freight corridor was delayed by almost a decade by the Indian Railways. The high-speed train is running late. We need to ensure that our planning, our execution is perfect, before time, not ahead of time schedule. Execution is the key to delivery on ground. And my view is that this has to be the real focus. And urbanization, if these high-speed trains link up the growth centers, then on both sides of the corridors, this will be transit-oriented development. You will drive urbanization in a very big way. So sustainable, smart urbanization will be the key to future growth of India.
But the truth again is, the truth is you mention urbanization. Again, you tick the right box, but urban governance cannot be top-down. You need it bottom-up, decentralized. We've seen the smart city project that the government has announced in the past. In different track records. Some cities have done well, others have lagged well behind. So there doesn't seem to be any magic wand out there. The government is thinking long term of what happens in the short term. We press the right buttons, but as I said, how do you execute to ensure world-class urban governance?
Yeah. So Rajdeep, you'd recall one of the announcements made in last year's budget was 1 lakh crore for urban cities which will be selected through a challenge route. I think that process is in its final stages. So if you take, and the other focus in this budget is again and again, FM talked about the challenge route. So when you take cities or you take ministries through a challenge route, they necessarily have to prepare, do homework, they do planning, everything, and they compete with each other. One of the main success of China is that they brutally and ruthlessly compete domestically. We need to ensure that. Do absolutely brutal competition between states, do ruthless competition between cities, and only select the best. The best will deliver, and that will be a learning lesson and a demonstration effect for others. And to my mind, the key to great execution is to really think of everything in the world has already been done. That's what Lee Kuan Yew said about Singapore. He said, I have not done anything new. I just picked up what has been done the best in the world. I picked up the best practices and executed them. That's what India needs to do. Just replicate what has been the best thing in the world done, crack it on ground and crack it quickly on ground. Do it 10-15% better than what has been done.
You know, my final question, Mr. Kant, because it's a question I'm asking a lot of industry representatives and you interact with industry, private investment not kicking in despite all the incentives that have been given over the last 6 years. Should the heavy lifting, why is private industry not doing the heavy lifting? Government pushes ahead with capex. What has gone wrong? Is there lack of trust, lack of faith? Why is private investment not pushing ahead? What is your message then to industry today?
So, Rajdeep, my view is that the government has done the heavy lifting as far as capex spend, public capex is done. You can't, last 4 years, we've done a 30% increase on capex increase year after year. There's very little absorption capacity beyond this by the government. You need private capex to step in. You need private investment to move in. You can't be a Viksit Bharat in 2047 without free enterprise. You can't grow without the private sector accelerating the pace of growth. This is critical. Now, two views to my mind is critical. The private sector balance sheets are very good. 3 years back, the corporate tax was reduced. The government gave away 1,45,000 crores to these corporates. Their balance sheet is flushed with liquidity, and therefore they need to put money, they need to take a little more risk. I know that capacity utilization is 70-75%, but they need to take risks. They need to have faith in the strategy of Viksit Bharat. They need to accelerate the pace of investment and drive growth. Only 3 or 4 corporates are today putting large resources into investments in India. You need hundreds and thousands of private sector to accelerate the pace of growth.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, Amitabh Kant. Speaking with usual energy, I appreciate you joining us. I also spoke earlier to Arvind Virmani, former Chief Economic Advisor, now with Niti Aayog, and I asked that same question. What was his biggest takeaway from Budget 2026? Listen in.
So basically, I have 2 or 3. The one is a very common one. I think it's important. I mean, we forget about it, but macro stability, the fiscal stability, etc., is very important, and we've had that for some time, but it continues, and it's particularly important at this time because of the uncertainties. You know, when uncertainty, there are a lot of global uncertainties or other types of potential shocks. You have to have a firm fiscal hold so that monetary policy can play a flexible role. This is what we know from history, that when kind of active monetary policy is needed, it's good to have a firm fiscal thing, and that's what works best. So that's one thing which is kind of in the background.
I take your point on macro stability, but does this budget do enough to do the other thing, growth, the animal spirits of the economy at a time of global headwinds? Does this budget do enough for that?
So 2 very important elements which I'm coming to next, which are my main takeaways. One is I have this simple slogan which is very unconventional. I say skills and jobs are 2 sides of the same coin. Everybody thinks of, here are a number of people looking for jobs, here are the jobs, you're not creating enough jobs. The way I look at it, you're not creating enough skills. So that is why that simplistic slogan maybe. But what this budget kind of signals, it's the second budget to do that you have to create the skills and the jobs will be there. What do I mean by that? When you upgrade let me give you a statistic. 58% of the workers in this country are self-employed. When you improve the skills of their skills, the quality of their output goes up, their income goes up. So it's like creating a new job. You're creating a completely different job. So that is the message on skills, I think, is very important. And just very quickly on services, I think the The role of services as job creators has, of course, everybody has it in the back of their mind. But we have said focused on IT, that IT is creating all these high-level jobs. But services in general, whether it's tourism, there's medical services, sports, whatever, are very important across the spectrum of jobs, whether it's low-skill jobs, medium skills, or high skills. So I think, from my perspective, the emphasis on these two things is very important for getting inclusive growth.
Okay. Skilling and jobs. But how is the world seeing today's budget? Arvind Virmani speaking to me earlier. Christian D. Guzman, Senior Vice President Moody's Ratings, is now joining me from Singapore. Appreciate your joining us. Your first reactions to India's budget. Do you believe this is done enough to counter some of the global headwinds and uncertainties that we've seen in the last 12 months?
Well, thanks for having me and allowing me to speak to you about the budget today. I think to answer your question is that this doesn't really provide. My first impression is that this doesn't really provide a significant offset to the external headwinds that we have today. But I think at the same time, what you have here is a demonstration of fiscal consolidation, given the target for a narrower fiscal deficit. So within that sort of overall sort of policy target, the government has tried to do what it can in terms of support to the economy, knowing that there is limited fiscal space.
But what would you have liked to see that you believe should? Where would you have liked to see the government do more to counter these global headwinds and do a more breakthrough budget? Because the government says, look, we're trying to ease US tariff distress, give export benefits and increase manufacturing competitiveness in certain sectors. Do you believe the government should have gone through this sector-wise approach, or should there have been some bigger reforms undertaken to offset the kind of distress that certain sectors are facing?
Well, I think we have to sort of look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture here is one of overall resilience. I think all of us in the market were quite concerned about the very punitive headline tariffs that the U.S. had imposed in the middle of last year, not just the 25%, but the additional 25% just given the purchase of Russian oil. But I think a couple of quarters on, you have seen that demonstration of economic resilience. So I think it was appropriate, given the limited amount of fiscal space that this government has, that they have, in essence, undertaken a tactical approach, a more sector-specific approach to help address those parts of the economy that may indeed be more affected.
Right, but the sector approach also comes on the back of the multiple free trade agreements that the government has signed in the last few months. Do you believe, therefore, that eventually the signals you're looking at are not just in the budget, but actually outside the budget, where some of the heavy lifting, some of the reforms, particularly in terms of ease of doing business, labor codes, all of that comes from outside the actual budget speech? Is that what you're looking at more closely now?
Well, I think that is correct. A lot of that heavy lifting in terms of helping to actually just facilitate more significant pickup in growth is going to have to be done outside of the budget. Once again, this government has been very adamant about portraying to the market that they are fiscally responsible and therefore anchoring their fiscal policy going forward on a downward trajectory in debt to GDP. What that means is that their ability to really push through significant fiscal stimulus is not there unless they do want to basically reverse that commitment that I mentioned.
I want to ask you one final question. We've seen currency volatility in recent times, FDI inflows slowing down. Do you see all that changing? Has this budget given signals to Moody's, for example, that FDI inflows will increase into India?
Well, I think from our assessment, when we look at this budget, it doesn't really change the broader parameters of how we view the sovereign credit profile. Once again, the pace of fiscal consolidation has slowed quite a bit, so we're still looking at relatively wide deficits, at least wider than what we had seen prior to the pandemic. Yes, there has been some progress since the pandemic, but we've in essence not sort of fully recovered yet. Debt remains quite elevated, and we do have a narrowing of the tax revenue base. This isn't just a function of this budget. It does reflect some of the measures that were taken previously, such as those in the last budget, where you've exempted a large amount of taxpayers from from paying tax, as well as the GST rationalization. So you do have a smaller envelope of revenue for which to really sort of facilitate growth. So with the deficit still wide, with the debt still elevated, I don't really think that we see here that there are strong signals in the market from the budget. However, we do think that, as you perhaps had implied earlier, some of the other things that we have seen, such as maybe stepping away from the traditionally more protectionist trade policy by signing more FTAs, really trying to consolidate trade relationships with partners other than the United States. Plus, I think what comes with that, perhaps potential improvements in ease of doing business and in easing the regulatory burden, not just for foreign investors, but also domestic investors. Those are the things that are going to move the needle.
Christian D. Guzman giving us a sense there from Singapore at this time of the night. Thank you so much for joining me here on this budget special. Okay, that's all that we could pack in on the show today. Thanks very much for watching from the entire team here. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.